When you picture how a democracy gets built, what do you see? Probably revolutions, conflict, a big struggle, right? Well, the story we're going to dive into today from the Kingdom of Bhutan, it completely flips that script. This is the incredible story of how a democracy was carefully built, not by revolutionaries, but by the king himself.
Okay, let's just stop and think about that for a second. The year is 1972. A brand new young king is being crowned. And in his very first speech, he's not talking about his absolute power or his divine right to rule. He's talking about partnership. This one sentence right here would basically become the blueprint for a political transformation that's really unlike any other in modern history.
And this wasn't just, some nice-sounding line for a coronation speech. For King Jigme Singye Wangchuck, this was a mission statement. It was a vision for a totally new kind of government, where the people weren't just subjects, but they were active partners in building their own country, their own future.
But look, having a great vision is one thing. Actually making it happen is a whole different ballgame. So how do you convince an entire nation to get on board with such a massive change? Well, you don't do it with some sweeping royal decree. You start small. You start with an experiment to prove that this whole idea can actually work.
So that first real test came in 1976. It was called the Kamdong Integrated Project. The king was visiting the area and he saw with his own eyes how farmers in over 40 villages were just getting crushed by terrible droughts. This wasn't some theoretical policy debate. This was a real, immediate life-or-death crisis.
And right here, you can see that new partnership model just click into place. It's so simple, but it's brilliant. The government didn't just show up and impose a solution. No, it provided the resources, the technical know-how, and the community, the people themselves, they provided the labor. It was a true collaboration, not a handout, and that created this powerful sense of shared ownership. And the results? They were absolutely staggering. In just 1 year, the community, working together with the government, completely transformed their region. They didn't just solve the drought problem with those new irrigation canals. They built the foundations of a modern community with schools and roads. The success was just undeniable. Now here's the crucial part. The king immediately saw that this was way more than just a local success story. This was a proven prototype. This little project in Kamdong was about to become the blueprint for decentralizing power across the entire country. All right, so the model's been tested, it's been proven to work, now it was time to scale it up. The next big phase was all about moving from these informal projects to creating formal, permanent institutions that could weave this partnership model into the very fabric of how Bhutan was governed. And what's so fascinating is how patient and deliberate they were about this. First, back in 1981, they set up these district-level councils, the DYT, to handle the money and coordinate the work. Then, a whole decade later, in 1991, they went even deeper with the GYT, pushing that power right down to the village level. It was this careful, gradual cascade of authority from the top all the way to the grassroots. Okay, so the foundations are in place, and this is where the story gets truly wild. With local governments up and running and the people getting used to having a say, the king began what you might call the most radical step of all. He started to willingly dismantle his own absolute power. 1998. That was the year everything changed. The king issued a royal decree. It's called a kasho, and with it, he handed over his executive powers to a brand new council of ministers. Just think about that for a minute. With the stroke of a pen, an absolute monarch voluntarily gave up his job as the head of government.
But that left one huge final question, right? Even with this new council, the king was still the ultimate authority. For a real democracy to work, there had to be some way to hold the monarch himself accountable to the people.
And the king's solution to this was, well, it was just astonishing. He insisted that the National Assembly bring back a system where they could vote to remove him from the throne. He was literally creating a way for his own people to fire him.
That quote says it all, doesn't it? He wasn't just making himself accountable. He was making the entire institution of the monarchy dependent on the will of the people. power was now officially designed to flow up from the citizens, not down from the throne.
And with that, with the king's own power now resting on the consent of his people, the final pillars of a modern constitutional democracy could finally be put into place. It was the culmination of this remarkable 30-year journey. Just look at this steady, methodical progression. You formalize the government, you draft a constitution, you hold the very first direct elections for local leaders, and then the final step. The king announces he's going to step down to make way for the new system. It was truly a masterclass in building a nation.
So when you lay it all out on a timeline like this, you really get the full picture. From that one small development project back in 1972, all the way to a full-fledged constitution and democracy in 2008. 36 years of patient, deliberate, and truly visionary leadership.
And today, that vision, that promise from his 1972 coronation speech, it's not just a memory. It's written right into Article 22 of the Constitution of Bhutan. The idea of people participating in their own governance is now the supreme law of the land. It's a permanent part of the nation. And that really is the incredible legacy of Bhutan's journey. It just completely challenges everything we think we know about how political change happens. And it leaves us with this powerful question to chew on. What does it mean for a country when democracy arrives not as the prize of a hard-won revolution, but as a gift from its king?